My dad collapsed, so I'm going back home. Wait, are you saying David collapsed? I see him often, and he didn't seem like anything was wrong. My husband, Ryan, cut me off sharply and declared, "He is just trying not to worry you. Once I get back from my trip, I'm staying at my parents' place for a while. Anna, you've got work, so there's no need for you to come." Before I could respond, the call ended. For a moment, silence hung in the air. But my mother-in-law, Virginia, didn't seem fazed and said casually, "How about some craft beer, Anna?" I accepted the craft beer Virginia offered and drank quietly. Then my father-in-law, David, spoke up. "Will you inherit our estate?" It was a sudden statement, but it carried a clear intention. Virginia then showed me a text message on her smartphone. Understanding everything, I replied cheerfully, "Sure." My name is Anna Bruck, 40 years old. I met Ryan, my same age, in my hometown, and we got married in our second year of dating. Ryan and I were introduced by a mutual friend from college who had been in the same business school. We bonded after going out for dinner together. Apparently, he had once been part of a theater group, but gave up on his dreams after not making it big and settled into a corporate job. After living together for some time, Ryan proposed to me on my 38th birthday, and we decided to marry. "I didn't marry you because I wanted kids. Anna, you have your career, so you should focus on that." Early in our marriage, he said that to me, which led me to choose to continue working without having children. I was also fortunate with my in-laws. Initially, I was nervous about what kind of people they might be, but my worries were unfounded. When I first visited their home, they welcomed me warmly. What a lovely woman. I always wanted a daughter, but given my age, I couldn't have another child. So it makes me so happy. Virginia beamed at me with a radiant smile as she said this, and I vividly remembered David standing beside her with a gentle expression. They also reassured me about grandchildren, saying, "It's your choice. You don't need to feel pressured." Virginia, now 75, is the CEO of a well-known local craft beer brewery. And David, the same age, is retired and collects Social Security. They accepted me as if I were truly their daughter, and I felt I had gained a happiness beyond what most people experience. But the smooth sailing didn't last long. 6 months after marrying Ryan, small changes began to emerge. "Sorry, but I've been reassigned to a new department. I'm now in sales, which involves a lot of travel. I might be away on long business trips. I know it's an inconvenience, but I hope you'll understand." What could I say but okay? I nodded, and he seemed relieved by my response. After that, just as he said, his business trips became more frequent. Sometimes, he'd be gone for as long as 2 months. Before I knew it, our first wedding anniversary arrived. But with Ryan so busy, there was no celebration, just the quiet passage of time. But I didn't complain about it, not even once. Ryan was working hard to support the family, and it wasn't like he wanted to travel for work all the time. I also had late nights at work, barely catching the last train home, and my time at home gradually decreased as well. Sometimes the pressure of being busy changes people. We used to live in peace, but now every little interaction seems to spiral into an argument. "Hey, what is this mess? Can't you at least keep things tidy? You're supposed to handle the housework, Anna." Ryan snapped as he returned from a business trip and saw the living room in disarray. His detached attitude, as if it wasn't his concern, made my blood boil. Without even looking his way, I replied, "I've been stuck at work with overtime lately, barely having a moment to clean. Usually, I keep it spotless, but today was just an exception." Besides, someone who hasn't cleaned the house even once since we moved in together has no right to criticize me. Normally, I wouldn't say something like that, but the unreasonable demands from my boss and the overwhelming workload left me with no emotional bandwidth. I ended up snapping coldly. From that day on, he began blatantly comparing me to other women. My coworker just got married recently, so I want to get her a wedding gift. She's incredible, never slacks off at work, and I thought she might be cutting corners at home. But no, she's amazing at housework too. Her husband's a really lucky guy. After his long business trip, Ryan got a temporary special leave from his company. Lately, he's been at home all the time, but of course, he doesn't lift a finger to help around the house. He just lounges on the sofa, complaining. Even though he knows how busy I am at work, he never says anything kind like, "Are you doing okay?" or "You should get some rest." Instead, he spends his days making snide remarks, comparing me to married women from his office. I never imagined things would unravel like this after just a year of marriage. I was constantly confused and overwhelmed. Ryan's passive-aggressive behavior didn't stop, and soon I found myself dreading seeing him. During the busiest times, I even started sleeping at the office just to avoid going home. One day, while I was agonizing over my strained relationship with Ryan, I got a sudden call from an unknown number. To my surprise, it was someone unexpected. "Anna, it's been a while. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time. Ryan gave me your number. Are you busy right now?" It was Virginia. With how hectic things had been and how little Ryan and I talked, I had no idea how he'd ended up giving my contact information to her. Still, I decided to match her tone and carry on the conversation. "It's been a while. I'm actually home today since I have the day off, so I'm free. But why did Ryan give you my number?" Virginia's voice brightened as she responded from the other end of the line. "Ryan's been on so many business trips lately, hasn't he? And he told me you've been so busy that you've been staying at the office sometimes. Listen, you need to take care of yourself. As a fellow woman, I was worried about you. Sorry if I'm being a nosy mother-in-law." Her sudden shift to an apologetic tone made me rush to reassure her. "Thank you so much for going out of your way. Honestly, I haven't had much of an appetite lately, and I've been eating a lot of fast food." Virginia didn't miss my small comment. She unexpectedly offered to cook for me. I felt bad about accepting, so I initially refused, but her persistence won me over. However, she was careful not to cross any boundaries. For instance, instead of coming to my house to cook, she prepared meals at her place and brought them over in Tupperware. She also made sure not to stay long, saying she didn't want to disrupt my relaxation at home. Having lost my mother to illness when I was young, I was deeply moved by experiencing a mother's warmth for the first time. Some might think Virginia's actions were overly meddlesome, but for me, they were nothing short of heartwarming. It never feels bad to know someone genuinely cares about you. She really maintained a respectful distance while still offering kind words, and I felt like life was being breathed back into my weary heart. Before I knew it, I stopped thinking about Ryan altogether. When Ryan did come home, he'd quickly leave again for another business trip. Whenever we talked, it inevitably turned into an argument, so we'd stop speaking much at all. Since we don't have kids, getting a divorce wouldn't be too complicated, but the thought of losing my connection with Virginia held me back. Time passed, and before I knew it, 2 years of marriage had gone by. I started spending more time with my in-laws, and Ryan became more like a roommate to me. With both of us financially independent, there were no issues with living expenses. I knew I needed to make a decision, but somehow I just couldn't bring myself to do it. Then, a significant change occurred. One evening, Ryan came home from work with a noticeably somber expression. I'd been reassigned to a new department. After my next trip, there won't be many more business trips, he said, sounding dissatisfied. It was as if he wanted to keep traveling. His reaction underscored how disconnected we'd become, leaving me feeling empty. We'd been using work as an excuse to live separate lives, each doing as we pleased. But perhaps it was time to bring this to an end. With that thought in mind, I decided to act. A week later, I was seeing Ryan off at the door as he prepared for his last business trip. This trip should only take about a week, he said as he reached for the doorknob. I spoke up. You know, we've been so busy that we haven't noticed much about each other. But I couldn't help but see that you got a new suit. It looks quite expensive, doesn't it? At that moment, Ryan flinched slightly and touched his nose nervously before replying. Well, yay, with all these trips, I've been getting plenty of per diem. So I figured it was time to upgrade. Clean and professional attire is important in sales, right? High-quality stuff is worth it. I'm still paying my share of the bills, so it shouldn't be a problem, right? His eagerness to wrap up the conversation was evident. As if I'd broached a forbidden topic, he touched his nose again. Well, it's true that first impressions are important for sales jobs. I didn't mean anything strange by asking. You cover the living expenses, so there's no problem, and I'm not blaming you. Sorry for holding you up. Take care. When I said that, he left the house, looking uneasy. As I thought back to his retreating figure and the way he touched his nose, a suspicion began to form in my mind. A few days later, while he was away on a business trip, an unexpected event happened one evening. I picked up a call, and Ryan's urgent voice came through the line. My dad collapsed, so I'm heading back home. I tried to respond as calmly as I could. Wait, is it true that David collapsed? I see him all the time, and he didn't seem unwell. Ryan interrupted me before I could finish. Dad's just been putting on a brave face to avoid worrying you. He's undergoing surgery right now, and Mom's completely exhausted by his side. So, for the sake of our family, please don't try to reach out to them for now. When I get back from my trip, I won't be coming home but will stay at my parents' house for a while. You've got work, so there's no need for you to come. Ryan rattled this off in one breath and hung up before I could even respond. Even though I wasn't using the speaker phone, his voice was loud enough for the two people in front of me to hear everything. For a moment, silence filled the room. But Virginia didn't react much and simply said, "How about we have some craft beer, Anna?" As if nothing had happened, she poured some craft beer from her company into a glass for me. Yes, where I was is at Ryan's parents' house. I often go shopping with my in-laws or receive meals from Virginia when Ryan isn't around. I've never thought it necessary to tell him about these things, so he probably doesn't know how close I am to his parents. That day, I had something to discuss with them, so I invited them for dinner. But it turned out that David had received a shipment of lobsters from relatives in Maine and invited me instead. So there we were, sitting at the table when Ryan's baffling call came through, leaving me perplexed. As I sipped the craft beer Virginia had given me, David spoke up. "Would you consider inheriting our family estate?" It was a sudden statement, but there was a clear intention behind it. Virginia showed me a text message on her smartphone. Understanding everything, I cheerfully replied, "Yes." 3 months later, Ryan finally came back home. I'm exhausted. So many things happened, I could barely eat," he said, stepping into the living room. Though he seemed to be trying to look weary, his complexion was good, and his figure hadn't changed. Matching his tone, I brought up a topic. So, how's David? I haven't been in touch with Virginia since then. He let out a deep sigh and began explaining the situation. Dad passed away last night. He held on for as long as he could. Mom and I were by his side the whole time, but seeing him grow thinner and frailer every day was so heartbreaking, he said, sounding utterly dejected. But no, it was just an act. Being a former theater actor, he was good at putting on a show. Sorry to bring this up right after you got home, but I'll be away from the house again for a while. Mom and I will handle everything for the wake and the funeral, just the two of us. You've got work and so much else going on, Anna. Don't worry about it, okay? A statement like that would normally be unthinkable. No matter how estranged, it's expected that a spouse would attend the funeral of their in-law. But there was a reason he didn't want me to come, and Ryan was desperately trying to cover it up. He was using his acting skills to convince me and smooth things over. Sensing that I seemed unaware of anything unusual, Ryan grew more confident. This was Dad's wish, too. He wanted only blood relatives to say goodbye. It's even in his will. You can just visit the grave later if you want. Anna, that's enough. He was trying to manipulate me, but little did he know I was fully aware of everything. Feigning a sad expression, I calmly asked, "So, how many months pregnant is she now?" Ryan froze in that instant. His eyes darted toward me, but his body remained still. Wait, what? That's not what we're talking about right now, is it? Come on, that's a bit much, don't you think? He was determined to proceed, as if I didn't know anything. But my question had clearly caught him off guard. I stayed composed as I delivered my words. I had known about Ryan's infidelity for quite some time. Breaking eye contact with him, I picked up my smartphone and opened my photo gallery. On the screen was undeniable evidence of Ryan's affair. As he stared at the screen, his voice shook in disbelief. What is this? Clearly shaken, Ryan blinked repeatedly, trying to process what he was seeing. I then revealed the truth to him. You contacted Virginia just to keep tabs on me at home, didn't you? Of course, she only acted out of kindness and had no idea what you were up to. Every time she updated you that I was staying home, you grew bolder with your affair. Am I wrong? Yes, it had all been orchestrated by him from the beginning. He lied to Virginia, saying, "I'm worried about Anna being alone," and subtly convinced her to visit me often. While he was away on business trips, he had Virginia check in on me and report back to him, keeping me under indirect surveillance. It was to avoid raising suspicion about his infidelity. I hadn't realized it at first, but 3 months ago, during a dinner, the truth came to light. The day you called, I was having a great time with Virginia and David at a lobster boil. You never thought your parents would ever invite me over for dinner and get along so well, did you? That was your mistake. You told me on the phone that your dad had collapsed, but right in front of me was him. It was at this point that Ryan finally understood that I knew everything. He suddenly changed his demeanor. Tisk. So you found out, huh? Did you hire a detective or something to investigate me? Yes, that's exactly what I did. Remember when you were getting ready for your last business trip, and I mentioned your suit? You touched your nose while we talked about it. Whenever you touch your nose like that, it usually means you're hiding something. It's a habit you're not even aware of, but I know it well. I didn't spend all those years with him for nothing. I had come to know even his smallest habits inside and out. I suspected you were hiding something from me, so I hired someone to look into it. And what they found was proof of your affair. The results came in the day after that dinner, by the way. I see. So you already knew. Fine, then let's get a divorce. As Ryan uttered those words so nonchalantly, I realized I had no love left for him. Even with divorce staring me in the face, I felt no sadness or pain. "Sure, let's do it then," I responded calmly, which for some reason made Ryan panic. "Why, you realize you're going to be dumped by me, right?" He clearly hadn't expected me to agree to divorce so readily. He must have thought I would suggest working things out or beg him not to leave me. Seeing Ryan visibly unsettled, I said, "A man who cheats isn't worth my time. Got it? I'm not being dumped, I'm the one dumping you." When I firmly declared my intention to divorce, Ryan was visibly shaken and flustered. Wait. Let's not rush into this divorce thing. I've already gathered the evidence of your affair and agreed to your request for a divorce. Oh, and I've also thought through the division of assets. You know me, I like to handle things properly, don't I?" When I asked him this, noticing his hesitation, he fell silent before slowly nodding. Just as I knew Ryan well, he knew me, too. And because of that, he seemed to understand that reconciliation was no longer an option. "Fine, let's get divorced," he answered in a trembling voice. I wondered how many couples out there manage to repair their relationship after one of them impregnates their affair partner. With that thought in mind, I immediately headed to court. Since we both already agreed on the divorce, the process wouldn't take long. Back home, when I told Ryan that the application had been submitted, he nodded solemnly. "I just didn't think you'd go through with the divorce so quickly." It kind of hit me. Seeing Ryan in a somewhat dazed state, I asked him with a wry smile, "Did you really think I'd cling to you and beg not to break up?" He didn't say a word, but his silence was enough of an answer. Ryan's affair partner was a colleague he often mentioned, comparing her to me. They probably can't be together anymore. Did he really think I'd forgive him if he said she was just a fling? If so, he's utterly naive. If we had child, it would have been a much tougher decision. But we don't, so I could cut ties cleanly. During your business trip, that woman came along too, didn't she? You were visibly upset about the transfer because you wouldn't be able to travel with her anymore, right? That's enough. Goodbye. I immediately said my goodbye. And that was that. For about a month after the divorce was finalized, I immersed myself in a new life, forgetting all about Ryan. Then one day, he showed up at my place, pale as a ghost. It seems he hired a private investigator to find my new address. "Hey, Dad just told me I'm not getting a penny of the inheritance. What's going on?" For weeks after the dinner fiasco, Ryan had been busy dealing with his pregnant mistress and had barely contacted his parents. That day, Ryan sent a text to Virginia saying, "Anna feels burdened by Mom's behavior, so you should stay away for a while," and hadn't spoken to her since. That text was sent after the infamous dinner, following a call from Ryan. When Ryan's parents learned about the divorce, they brought up the matter of inheritance. Ryan stood before me, visibly shaken. "So you blabbed, and now Dad knows too. But giving the inheritance to you is ridiculous. I'm their real son, and you're just the ex-daughter-in-law. How is this fair? No wonder you didn't seem fazed during the divorce." His insinuation that I was some kind of money grubber infuriated me, and I retorted sharply, "Don't misunderstand. I agreed to the property division because it's standard procedure in a divorce. Inheritance has nothing to do with it. Aren't you forgetting something?" Ryan looked confused, having no idea what I meant. I brought up the matter of damages. What? You never mentioned that during the divorce." He whined like a child, but I calmly explained that I had been in a rush to finalize the divorce and had only agreed to the standard division of assets. However, I was fully intent on seeking damages. I've been discussing this with my lawyer for the past month. There's a lot to calculate, so I couldn't tell you right away. ID is still not complete. But let me make one thing clear. I'm suing you for damages. Given the gravity of him impregnating his mistress, I estimated about $200K in damages. Ryan, aghast at the amount, protested, "That's impossible. It's way too much." I responded matter-of-factly, "You cheated while we were married, causing me emotional distress. Paying damages for emotional pain is your obligation. If you break something, you pay for ID. This is no different." Ryan couldn't say another word, leaving pale-faced. 6 months later, we sat down for negotiations about the inheritance. Though my work schedule was hectic, this was a battle I wasn't going to lose. I explained the situation to my boss and used a little vacation time I had left to settle things with Ryan. Virginia suggested we have the discussion at her house, so the four of us, myself, Ryan, and his parents, gathered in the living room. Ryan looked visibly uncomfortable. Apparently, the husband of his affair partner had found out about the situation, and things were getting quite messy on that end as well. "This is really not the time to call me here," Ryan muttered under his breath, only to be sharply rebuked by Virginia. "You got a married woman pregnant, and yet you're acting like the victim. What on earth were you thinking?" We stepped away from running the business to enjoy retirement, and now we have to deal with this mess. David nodded deeply at her words. Virginia had retired as the head of a craft brewery she had built from the ground up, and now she and David were living off their Social Security benefits. It had only been a short time since we all shared a lobster boil together when this situation blew up. The divorce alone had caused quite a stir. But when Virginia found out the affair partner was married and carrying Ryan's child, her expression was like a storm brewing. David and Virginia had been with me the day I got the call from Ryan, so they didn't need much explanation to understand what had happened. Naturally, they were on my side. Ryan was completely isolated, receiving no support from anyone. Whenever he tried to complain, Virginia's sharp words quickly shut him down. In this situation, he had no choice but to shrink into himself, physically curling up in his seat. I took a deep breath and got to the main point. About the inheritance, Virginia and David both agreed to designate me as the recipient of the living trust. This was their decision, and there's nothing you can do to change it. Ryan's face crumpled, and he turned to his parents, pleading desperately, "Please, come on, I'm your son. How can you do this to me?" The two of them exchanged a glance. David sighed and looked into the distance, muttering softly, "In your mind, I guess I'm already dead, so I don't know why you're so surprised by this." David gave Virginia a meaningful look, and she followed with a declaration of her own. "A person who exploits his family to cheat on his wife isn't my son anymore." Ryan understood better than anyone how Virginia had built her craft brewery into a successful enterprise and accumulated considerable wealth. He'd always assumed that, as their only child, he would inherit everything. He was clearly panicking now that things were taking such an unexpected turn. "Why Anna? Why her? She's not even family anymore. What's the point of giving her the inheritance?" Ryan clenched his fists, his body trembling with frustration. Virginia placed her hand on her cheek and addressed him. "Yes, Ryan and Anna are divorced, so technically, we're no longer family. But there's nothing strange about me choosing to give Anna the inheritance. Honestly, I spend more time with her than I do with you these days. Divorce doesn't mean ties are suddenly cut. Don't you agree, David?" Hearing those words, David nodded several times and muttered, "Well, I guess I don't have a son anymore." Unfortunately, it must have been deeply shocking for him to realize he was used in the affair. Even though David was usually calm, his anger was palpable. For 3 whole months, you were living in that apartment you rented as your little love nest with her, weren't you? I heard she planned to have the baby as her husband's child. Now that you're being transferred and won't have business trips anymore. Meeting her is impossible. While you probably wanted to soak up every last moment with her before it ended, right? As I said that, Ryan's face turned bright red. He spat out his words in a rage. I'm going to contest this as an unfair inheritance. Virginia replied calmly. Do whatever you like. Oh, I will. And after that, I'm cutting all ties with this family forever. Half crazed, he yelled and stormed out of the house. He must have been deeply upset about the fact that I would be receiving the inheritance gift, but since we had all anticipated this, I exchanged a knowing smile with my in-laws. Later, when Ryan filed his complaint, my in-laws smoothly agreed. Ryan seemed satisfied to receive the money, but that was when our counterattack began. Soon after, I filed a claim of my own. This was separate from the emotional distress claim related to the affair. It was a demand for the return of money Ryan had taken from my personal savings account during our marriage. That expensive suit, bought with my money, since it was my savings account from before marriage. I hadn't checked or used it much, but after hiring a private investigator, I had all the evidence I needed. Ryan, having accepted the inheritance gift, couldn't claim he was broke. He had no choice but to pay the full amount and hurriedly called me in a panic. Wait. You went that far to investigate. You're the one who didn't keep track of your bank account, but the moment he accessed my account without permission, it became malicious intent. He had never anticipated such meticulous planning, and he was now desperately pleading with me. But it was all too late. Sorry, Ryan, but this is reality. You've already accepted the inheritance, haven't you? Why don't you use that to pay me back? Virginia and the others had agreed to Ryan's demands, knowing this outcome was inevitable. As it dawned on him that the money he had fought so hard for would immediately go to me, he began crying uncontrollably. Your irresponsibility and short-sightedness caused this, Ryan. You're an adult. Tone up to your actions. And let it sink in that your parents had to bail you out one last time. With that, I hung up and blocked his number. Afterward, Ryan used the inheritance money from Virginia and the others to pay off his debts and restitution in full. This left him without any savings. And when he told his mistress, she instantly changed her attitude toward him. I also demanded compensation from the other woman, and after paying it, she reportedly lied to her boss, claiming Ryan pressured me into a romantic relationship. As far as I was concerned, as long as she paid the compensation, what happened to Ryan or his mistress at work was none of my concern. In the end, Ryan felt too ashamed to stay at his job and resigned. The mistress seemed to have gotten away scot-free, but naturally, her husband filed for divorce. Their child was left in her husband's care, and he decided to raise the child alone. However, he refused to take responsibility for the child she had with Ryan. That was only natural. Panicked, the mistress contacted Ryan, but expecting help from the very person she betrayed was absurd. I don't have any money to help you. I had to pay compensation to Anna and your husband, too. You're on your own now, Ryan reportedly said, his words dripping with irresponsibility. I don't know what became of the two of them, but their child was sent to a temporary care facility after birth, and eventually the parents signed away their rights for adoption. Hearing that gave me some peace of mind. The innocent child was adopted by loving foster parents who could provide the care and love they deserved. Both Ryan, who indulged in an affair while on business trips, and his mistress, who cheated despite having a husband and young child, faced consequences befitting their actions. This closure finally made me feel like I was free from the entanglement. I also quit the job I had worked at and joined the craft beer brewery Virginia had established. Spending time with Virginia sparked my interest in brewing craft beer. Moreover, she expressed her wish for me to take over the business someday. "Anna, you're diligent and smart. I know you'll do a great job." With those words, Virginia and David handed over the business to me completely, and even gifted it to me during their lifetime. I was immensely grateful to them. Although they said it was because our son caused you trouble, I used part of the money to support their living expenses. From now on, I decided to live true to myself while continuing to repay their kindness.
Look at that, such adorable eyes. It's been years since I've seen a baby up close. Just watching is soothing. Babies are truly wonderful. My younger sister, June, had given birth, and my in-laws insisted on coming from afar to see the baby. The baby, cradled by June, was sleeping soundly in the center of attention. "You're being so good today, not crying. I wonder what kind of person you'll grow up to be." "Yeah, babies are wonderful. Why don't we have one, Leah?" In the room filled with warm sunlight, a whirlwind of emotions churned inside me. Well, babies are a blessing. All right, let's try for a baby. I want a child too. The moment I heard those words, I stood up slowly. Everyone's eyes turned sharply towards me. "What? You already have one. You're the baby's dad, aren't you?" All eyes in the room shifted to the baby. "My name is Leah. I am 41 years old. I work part-time at a cafe in a shopping mall near our home. My husband, Rafe, is 2 years older than me and works as a long-haul truck driver, spending most of his time on the road. He comes home about once or twice a week. Since we both dislike being overly interfered with, we don't feel much loneliness. At least I don't, though if anything is lonely, it's that we don't have children. It's not that we never wanted them. When we married in our 20s, we thought it was just a matter of timing due to our youth and didn't think deeply about it. As I got older, our lack of children became more concerning, and we even tried fertility treatments, which were still rare at the time. I became increasingly anxious about the lack of results, but Rafe felt differently. "We've been trying for so long without any success. There's no point in continuing." "Maybe, but if we keep trying a bit longer, it might work." "I'm tired from work, and spending my days off at the clinic is depressing. I'm healthy. Maybe the problem is with you, Leah." With those words, Rafe stopped going to the treatments. Honestly, we didn't have a lot of extra money. Feeling resentment towards Rafe's words, I also gradually stopped going to the clinic. "Good morning. You're up early again today." "Good morning. I just woke up early." The greeting came from Debbie, who lives in the apartment below us. We've lived in this apartment for nearly 20 years, and Debbie has been here even longer. There are many long-term residents in this apartment. As a result, the age group is older, but everyone is kind and there are no neighborhood disputes. "If there are any troubles, they're within the home," I muttered to myself where no one could hear. When I was younger, I dreamed that our time together would last forever. But now, the time Rafe spends at work is my only relief. Our relationship isn't outwardly bad, but after 20 years of marriage, our conversations have become scarce. Additionally, we've both naturally started avoiding the topic of children. One afternoon, the doorbell rang. "Hey Leah, it's June. Come on in." Standing at the door was my younger sister, June, 5 years my junior. I started dating Rafe and moved in with him around the same time June graduated from high school and left home. Both June and I live fairly close to our childhood home. Since our mom moved into a nursing home, our dad, Alec, has been living there alone. Do you ever go check on Dad? I've been too busy. Dad rarely answers the phone anyway. I guess he's doing fine. Figures. Dad may be reserved, but he gets lonely. You visit him often enough, so it's fine. You're really hands-off, you know that? My dad, Alec, has always been a workaholic and a grumpy person with everyone. He left all the household chores to Mom. Nowadays, he can manage basic tasks himself. But right after Mom left, I was worried about him and visited him almost daily. Dad, here's food for tomorrow's breakfast and lunch. You can microwave it in these containers. I've folded the laundry, so please put it away yourself. Oh, and also. Dad never said a word, but I continued visiting, resigned to the fact that's just how he is. In contrast, Rafe's parents live far away, in a snowy area where snow piles as tall as adults in winter. My in-laws are social butterflies, the opposite of my dad, and often visit us. By the way, Jeannie brought some persimmons last time. Would you like some? Not now, thanks. I've got a show to watch, so I'll head back before evening. I'll take some persimmons with me. All right, I'll get them ready. Rafe's parents come here often, don't they? Considering the distance. Jeannie always wanted to live in the city. She's happy just visiting the mall. Yeah, you went out with them last month, didn't you? Unlike with some in-laws, I've never had any issues with Rafe's parents. They're open and honest. Well, I should get going. I want to stop by the convenience store. Be careful. It gets dark early these days. Don't sound like Mom. We're both old enough to know that. When's your next day off? Let's go to that new cafe near the station. My next day off is probably Saturday. I'll call you. June checked her schedule on her smartphone as she put on her shoes. June lives just a couple of bus stops away. She often drops by our place, especially when she doesn't feel like cooking dinner. Sometimes she even stays the night, so we have a bed for her. Oh, by the way, Leah, I'm pregnant. What? How? Her unexpected announcement made me raise my voice. You know those dating apps? They're pretty fun. I met someone about a year ago, and things just happened. I've been feeling unwell and the doctor told me I'm 3 months pregnant. June laughed through her nose as she spoke. Really? Is he a good guy? I don't know if you'd think he's decent, but he's a good person. June's tone softened. Maybe she felt guilty about meeting someone through a dating app. Well, congratulations. I guess. Sorry for getting pregnant before you, Leah. No, don't worry about it. The word stung, but I forced myself to be happy for June. Let me know if you need anything. Thanks. I will, June said as she left. A swirl of emotions churned inside me. I should be happy for her. I told myself. I told Rafe about June's pregnancy when he got home. Really? June's pregnant? With whom? Someone she met on a dating app. I haven't met him yet. Wow, that's something. Rafe, sitting on the sofa, finished his beer and turned around. Why don't we have any good news like that? What? Are we really bringing this up again? It's your fault for stopping the treatments. I'd love to hold my own child. You stopped the treatments first, Rafe. Don't blame me. I'm healthy. The problem is you. I dream of having kids. To Hi, I was the sole reason for our childlessness. I felt frustrated with Rafe and with myself for not being able to solve our issues together. From then on, he often made snide remarks about our lack of children. I wish I had a kid to watch over while they run errands. He'd say this while watching TV shows featuring children. Once, he even bought a book on fertility and threw it at me. I paid for this with your money. Study it well. Is it fair to be treated this badly just because we don't have kids? To distract myself, I often helped June with her baby. Cleaning the room, shopping, cooking, and so on. Sorry, Leah. My morning sickness is really bad. No worries, it's fine. June's room is always messy whenever I go there, and her meals seem to consist mostly of store-bought ready-made dishes and instant noodles. Having a baby in your belly is tough. Everything makes you tired. Oh, sorry, Leah. You wouldn't understand since you don't have a baby. She sometimes tries to assert dominance over me. She exaggerates the hardships of pregnancy at every opportunity. Yet, she doesn't seem to think about proper nutrition for the baby or prepare for its birth. I sometimes caution her, but it doesn't seem to resonate with June. June's baby was growing well, but I had one major concern. I had never seen the man who was supposed to be her husband. Aren't you going to introduce him to Dad? He's often away on business trips. It's old-fashioned to think introductions are necessary. I see. Well, let's make it happen another time. Okay. She stood up as if to declare the conversation over. I had other thoughts, but chose not to delve further. It wasn't the right time yet. Time passed, and June gave birth to a healthy baby boy. June hesitated to inform Dad. They didn't talk much before. I'm worried he will be mad because it's out of order. Really? He accepted it easily when it was my turn. After much prodding from me, June finally made the call to report the birth to Alec. Despite June's worry, our father showed no emotion and simply said, I see. In contrast, when I reported June's childbirth to Rafe's parents, they reacted as if it was their own grandchild. Leah, I'd love to send a gift. Would that be okay? With that, they started sending baby gifts through Rafe, diaper cakes, bibs, and baby clothes. Eventually, they couldn't hold back and expressed a strong desire to meet the baby. Travis and Jeannie want to meet the baby. What? It has nothing to do with me. You received so many gifts. It won't hurt to meet them. June was initially reluctant, but she eventually gave in. I arranged a gathering at my home, turning it into a celebration with a feast of food. Oh, look at those adorable eyes. Really? It's been years since I saw a baby up close. Rafe's parents were overjoyed. Rafe also attended, making it seem like a joyous occasion. Ah, babies are wonderful. Why haven't we been blessed with one, Leah? Well, babies are a gift, after all. But after almost 20 years, and we still don't have one. Maybe there's something wrong with us. That's not true. All right, let's try for a baby. I want one too. As soon as I heard that, I stood up slowly. Everyone's eyes turned to me. What? You already have one. Isn't the baby yours? I pointed to the baby sleeping peacefully in June's arms. Everyone was speechless, and the room fell into an eerie silence. June was the first to speak, quickly laying the baby down and glaring at me. What are you talking about? Are you losing it because you can't have kids? Exactly. Are you saying Leah and I had an affair? That's ridiculous. Rafe's parents still looked puzzled by the exchange. Got it. You're trying to say anything to claim the baby as your own. It's shameful as a sister. You've always blamed others. Isn't it your fault we can't have kids? As Jeannie tried to calm Rafe, I pulled out my smartphone. I decided not to trust either of you after seeing this. The screen showed photos of June's home. I displayed a series of photos I had taken. They showed Rafe leaving June's house and the two of them embracing passionately. Rafe and June, who had been insulting me moments ago, were now speechless, their faces pale. These were taken 3 years ago. Why do you have those? You were oddly excited when June stayed over. And June, you clung to him. I was worried. That's just a part of showing affection. Debbie, who lives downstairs, told me she heard a woman's voice. I had just come back from my part-time job. It's strange, isn't it? Debbie must have been mistaken. Maybe she heard the TV. Oh, you said you were working that day, but you were home. At first, I thought it was some unknown woman. I didn't want to believe it, but to confirm, I tracked your smartphone's GPS. You had no right to do that. When I tracked it, it showed June's house. That alone wasn't enough proof, but I didn't have the courage to go there myself. So, I asked someone to take these photos. The shock I felt when I saw those photos still suffocates me just thinking about it. But more than that, the frustration and anger prevailed. I always suspected you too. Did you think you could keep it hidden? I have gathered more evidence than you can imagine. So, you doubted my pregnancy announcement too? It was shocking. I wanted to believe it was a lie. But June, you've always avoided eye contact and tried to leave the scene when lying. You did the same when I asked about your partner. What are you talking about? The atmosphere in the room was heavy and oppressive. It felt like weights were tied to my legs, pulling me down. But I couldn't back down now. If I didn't settle this today, I'd regret it forever. This is a mistake. It's all a lie. Rafe, did you betray Leah? My father-in-law's voice was trembling. Jeannie looked like she was about to cry. I felt guilty for involving them, but having more witnesses was necessary. Our home had turned into a battleground. Just then, the front door burst open. It was my father, Alec. His footsteps echoed as he strode in. He marched straight to June. Dad! Alec's face was flushed with anger. June! How could you do this? What? This has nothing to do with you, Dad. Even now, you say that? I saw and heard you too with my own eyes and ears. I don't know what you're talking about. I was the one who took the photos. Leah came to me in tears, determined to fight. So, I followed your tracks. Using GPS to track their movements, I planned to get photographic evidence. But doubt crept in. Should I reveal the truth? Or should I pretend not to know and keep living as usual? When I was at a loss, I turned to Dad. Stubborn as he is, he listened empathetically. He faced the mistake his own daughter made. My father was incredibly reliable. And he offered to get the evidence himself. Don't you dare interfere! You two were talking loudly at the front door. I heard everything. Do you remember what you were talking about? I don't remember every little thing. June said she couldn't stand Leah being happy, that the man loved her more than Leah, and that she wanted to leave Leah to be with him. If you want to hear it again, I recorded it on my phone. Dad, usually silent, couldn't contain his anger. I wanted to be happy about having a grandchild. But when Leah told me the truth, I felt ashamed. Children don't choose their parents. When this child learns the truth, can you face them? Seeing my father plead, I almost cried for the first time today. I fought back the tears and turned to Rafe and June. His voice was steady but intense. Apologize now, June. It won't make things right, but do it sincerely. No! It's not my fault! June was panicking under my father's pressure. Tears streamed down her face, but I felt no sympathy. Rafe! Where do you think you're going? Travis caught Rafe trying to sneak out the door. How could you? How could you? Travis forced Rafe's head to the floor in a bow. Then my father-in-law bowed too. Leah. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. His voice trembled differently this time. Next to him, Jeannie was crying and bowing. Rafe had given up, no longer resisting. Travis, Jeannie, please stand up. Dad, calm down. You'll wake the baby. I took a deep breath and pulled out my final card from my bag. There's no repairing our marriage. Rafe, let's get a divorce. I handed the divorce papers to Rafe. Divorce? Yes. I can't trust you anymore. Divorce? That's too much. It was just a fling. Rafe's face was the most pathetic I had ever seen. A fling? Rafe, was I just a fling to you? I had a baby because of that fling. June, scolded by her dad and betrayed by Rafe, screamed with a face twisted with anger and sorrow. I don't know about any baby. How do you even know it's mine? It's definitely your baby. There's no one else. Both of them began to shed their pretenses, trying to escape the current pressure. Rafe, you've always said you wanted children, but now you reject the baby? That's... Rafe stammered. And June, why did you go after someone else's husband? As Dad said, I couldn't stand seeing you happy, Leah, June replied. Or maybe you were just desperate and the only one who showed interest was Rafe. Blaming me makes you feel less guilty, doesn't it? Just because you got married, you think you're so great, June retorted. June had always struggled with long-term relationships. It wouldn't be surprising if she felt an inferiority complex toward me. But that didn't excuse her actions. I've been betrayed for 3 years. I'm sorry, but I've made up my mind. I'm going back to my family home. That way, the baby and everything you wanted will be left here. Isn't this what you wanted? Leaving? Then who will do the housework? June will do it, of course. Right? Why should I do that? June snapped. Because that's what Rafe expects from a wife. In the end, neither of them changed their twisted personalities. In fact, it made it easier to leave them behind. Ignoring Rafe's pleas, I grabbed my packed belongings, and Dad and I left the apartment. Rafe and June were left in a state of shock, and my in-laws bowed deeply without a word. The day after returning to my family home, my father started packing her remaining belongings. She needs to know there's no place for her here either, as Dad said. He took the packed items to June's house. He seemed determined to give her a piece of his mind but returned sooner than expected. She wasn't home. What a waste of time, he said. Thank you. Let me make you some tea, I replied. I poured hot water from the electric kettle into a teapot. You must have hated seeing her, I said. A parent remains a parent no matter what their child does, he said, looking me in the eye. And you're my child too. Don't say such sentimental things at your age, I said, feeling embarrassed as I poured his tea. After stopping by June's house, he had also visited the apartment where I used to live. A day later, the scene was deserted, with no one around. That day, my father happened to run into a neighbor downstairs. The neighbor said that after Dad and I left, they could still hear loud voices coming from our apartment. My in-laws had brought gifts of apology afterward. I truly felt indebted to them. The divorce with Rafe proceeded smoothly thanks to my in-laws' help. Though the thought of alimony crossed my mind, I doubted Rafe could pay it. I didn't want to burden my in-laws either. With no ties to bind him, Rafe's life unraveled. Before the divorce, I managed all the household finances. After the divorce, he was free to spend his income as he pleased, and it seemed he lacked self-control and was spending recklessly. He started going out drinking every night and came back to the apartment less frequently. He went to work still hungover, and since no one in the transportation industry can work effectively with a hangover, he was quickly fired. He tried to get another job, but he made the same drinking mistakes at a different transportation company. Lacking the skills for any other kind of work, he eventually couldn't pay the rent and was evicted from the apartment. Now, no one knows where he is or how he's living. As for June, Rafe's parents, concerned about the baby, offered to let her move in with them. It must have been a tough decision for my in-laws. From their perspective, she was the one who destroyed their son's family. Still, they extended their help, considering the baby's future, and I'm grateful for their kindness. However, their kindness did not reach June. Having nowhere else to go, June agreed to live with them at first. But after Rafe got fired, she started feeling uncomfortable and eventually left, abandoning the baby. The baby, on the other hand, is thriving under the care of Rafe's parents. Even after the divorce was finalized, I stayed in touch with Rafe's parents. I learned about Rafe and June's situation through them. Rafe and June took advantage of their parents' kindness and fled from their responsibilities. My contact with his parents is partly a way to make amends for my ex-husband and sister. The baby is innocent. Through a special adoption process, the baby legally became the child of Rafe's parents. Though I no longer have a legal connection to the baby, Rafe's parents always welcome me warmly. Now, I interact with them as friends rather than in-laws. Even though Rafe is gone, his parents continue to visit me just as often as they used to. Once you know the fun of the city, it's hard to quit, Jeannie said. Thank you for traveling such a long way. I'll make sure to give you the best hospitality while you're here, I replied. Though I felt bad about the long travel, I was grateful for their kindness. Someday, I'll have to tell the child the truth, but with understanding parents like them, I feel we can overcome it. Dad is still as quiet as ever, but he seems a bit softer than before. He even started helping take care of the baby. Whenever Rafe's parents visited and Jeannie and I were washing dishes, Dad would quietly approach the baby. Whenever Dad looked at the baby's face, he'd try to hide his delighted expression from me. One time, I noticed Dad changing the baby's diaper. I exclaimed in surprise. Dad, you're changing the diaper? I'm surprised, I exclaimed. What are you talking about? I've raised 2 kids. This is nothing, Alec retorted. Despite everything, it was Dad who was probably the happiest about June having a child. I never asked him directly, but I imagined him doing a victory dance in his mind, and I couldn't help but smile while watching him. I left my previous part-time job and started working as a caregiver at the facility where Mom resides. The work is tough, but I enjoy talking to Mom and many others there. All my past troubles haven't vanished completely. But still, I am happy now. I plan to find as much joy as possible in the future to make up for all the lost time. Hey, Nicole is already 20. So we can get divorced without child support. That's why we should get married soon, Rachel. I heard the familiar voice of my husband James from behind me. As I turned around, I saw a man and a woman sitting face to face at a table a short distance away. Dad. Nicole, my daughter, was the first to notice. On this day, I had taken Nicole to a fancy restaurant to celebrate her 20th birthday and splurge a little. I didn't recognize the woman sitting across from James, but she looked much younger than him. The two seemed oblivious to the stares around them, holding each other's hands tightly. No matter how you look at it, they don't seem like just acquaintances, do they? Nicole muttered in a cold tone. Yeah, it seems that way. And I nodded in agreement. You'll really marry me finally? Wow, thank you. I can finally be free from my aging wife and spoiled daughter. I love only you, Rachel. I swear I'll protect you for the rest of my life. Hey, there's this church I've always dreamed of. Why don't we go see it together this Saturday? Yeah, we can just tell them I have a business trip and make up some excuse. They'll buy it. I want to go on a trip with you again. Unaware that we were listening nearby, James and his mistress Rachel were lost in their own little world. This is kinda gross. I'm going over there for a sec. With those words, Nicole slowly got up from her seat and made her way to James and Rachel's table. Congratulations on your marriage, you two. My name is Misty, and I'm 53 years old. I married my elite businessman husband James in my 30s and have supported him as a housewife for over 20 years since then. 3 years after our marriage, I gave birth to Nicole, and now she's already 20. Time really flies. My life so far hasn't been all fun and games. I lost my mother to cancer when I was in middle school, and after that, with my father's support, I somehow managed to graduate from high school and college. My father also became sickly after turning 70, and a few years later, he passed away and went to heaven. Nicole, who was in middle school at the time, had been doted on by her grandfather since she was little, and I remember her saying to her peacefully sleeping grandfather, "Grandpa, thank you. I'm going to become a hero of justice like you." I'll never forget the words my father left to me and Nicole just before he took his last breath. When I die, I want you to use my inheritance effectively to help others. Those words were so characteristic of my father. With my father's last words in my heart, I resolved to keep living. James was an excellent employee at a major corporation, but he didn't seem to get along well with his strict father, William. Even when he visited his parents' home once or twice a year, he hardly ever tried to engage with his father on his own. "I just can't deal with William," he would always say with a deep sigh while driving back home. "He can be tough, but that's not all there is to him." Of course, when I misbehaved as a child, my father would often scold me, but I also knew his kind side. So, I hoped that the relationship between my father and my husband would improve someday. Well. Honestly, it's a relief to think that I'll be free from that difficult man. After my father's funeral, while Nicole and I were deep in grief, I felt sad when I saw James alone, smiling. "Dad, you can't say things like that. Grandpa was a good person. You got along well with William. Maybe you've even started to take after his personality?" He frowned, looking annoyed. With the absence of his strict father, he started going out and about as if he had lost control. He wouldn't come home after work, and even when he did occasionally, he wouldn't say a word to me or Nicole before heading out again. "Dad, you're going out again? Think about Mom a little, will you?" When Nicole complained, he would get irritated. "Shut up. I'm sick and tired of looking at that woman's face," he would say without even glancing at me before leaving. Eventually, he stopped contributing the salary he earned to the household. "Nicole is about to start high school. There will be expenses for tuition, cram school, and whatnot. Surely you understand that much?" No matter how many times I pleaded, James wouldn't listen. Instead, I noticed that he had gotten a new car, and brand name receipts started appearing from his pockets. No matter how much I questioned him, "It's none of your business," James would only say. I gradually started to feel that complaining was futile, and I stopped saying anything. "A person like that isn't a father." Nicole had completely lost faith in James, and it was understandable. "Don't worry. I'll figure out the money somehow so that you can go to school properly." Since getting married, I had no work experience, and it was financially tough, but I decided to use part of my father's inheritance for Nicole. My father had said to use the inheritance for helping people, but this was for Nicole's future. I'm sure my father would forgive me. It was when Nicole was in high school, during career counseling. "In the future, I want to become a lawyer. I want to become a lawyer and help people in need. That's why I'm aiming for law school." Her eyes were shining as she declared this clearly. "You can do it, Nicole." I decided to support Nicole with everything I had as she started working towards the entrance exams. To help Nicole concentrate on her studies, I carefully moved around to avoid making household noises. I even set my own rules, like calling out to her when she came out of her room to offer her a late-night snack. "Thanks, Mom. But don't worry too much. If you overdo it and ruin your health, I won't be able to focus on studying at all," Nicole said with a wry smile, as I was worrying excessively. Before I knew it, Nicole had grown up into a full-fledged adult, and I realized my daughter's growth in unexpected ways. In contrast, James would carelessly turn up the TV volume to watch sports games or even sing in the bath, despite her studying in her room. The breadwinner of the family worked hard at his job again today. When you become an elite like me, everyone relies on you, so every day is tough. "Hey, Misty, give me a shoulder massage." "Can't you be a little quieter?" Nicole is going through a tough time studying for her entrance exams right now. "Huh? She's a cheeky daughter who talks back to me. There's no way she'll pass the exams anyway." "She's your own daughter. And you call yourself a father? You hardly even contribute to the living expenses. You're lucky you have an inheritance. Be grateful to your beloved father." "Ha!" As I bit my lip in frustration, I heard the sound of the room door being flung open forcefully. "Dad, enough already." Nicole angrily strode towards James. "If you're only going to get in the way, we don't need a father like you in this house. Just leave already." "Fine. I'll leave. I can't be bothered to take care of an incompetent daughter born from an incompetent mother." Perhaps enraged by Nicole's direct words, James stormed out of the house in his old shirt, without even changing. "I'm sorry. I'm fine. In the future, I'll definitely become a lawyer and show that kind of father what I'm made of." My daughter's reassuring words made me feel refreshed. And then, the day of the acceptance announcement arrived. Nicole, who had received the results from the university via email, called me. "Mom, I passed." The moment I heard the news, I sank into the sofa, feeling all the strength leave my body, and I was in a daze for a while. "Hello, Mom? Are you listening?" "I'm sorry, I'm listening properly." "Congratulations." Nicole had successfully gotten into the law school of her first-choice university. Moreover, it seemed she was eligible for a tuition waiver, as she had achieved top-class results in the entrance exam rankings. When she came home, I congratulated her again. "Congratulations, Nicole. I knew you would definitely get in." "Thanks, Mom. But this is just a milestone. My goal is to become a lawyer and help as many people in need as possible," Nicole said, not content with her current situation and already looking ahead. As I listened to Nicole's words, I suddenly remembered my late father's face, and before I knew it, my tears were flowing uncontrollably. "What's up? Did something good happen?" he asked suspiciously as he returned home. I had told him in advance that this day was the university's acceptance announcement day, but James didn't seem to remember even that. "Well, Dad, I got into the law school brilliantly." When Nicole said this proudly, James didn't even congratulate her. "I don't need dinner. I'm going out again right after I take a shower," he said in a cold manner and headed to the bathroom. "It's the usual, but it seems to be getting worse lately. I bet he's having an affair or something." This is just my intuition as a daughter, though. "No way. That's a bit of a stretch." I laughed it off, but I had been feeling the same way as Nicole's intuition for a while now. James would go out at night, and each time he would wear cologne that he didn't usually wear to work and change into fashionable clothes before leaving. And on this night, too, he was dressed up fashionably from head to toe and giving off a scent of cologne. "Where are you going now?" "It's obviously for work. I'm an elite, so I'm busy." "You need cologne too?" "You weren't wearing it during the day at work, though." "It's none of your business. It depends on the client. Don't say anything if you don't know how society works." With that, he ran out of the house as if escaping. "It's definitely suspicious." He averted his gaze. He was clearly flustered. Her intuition was probably right. However, we didn't have a single piece of evidence to pursue it. After that, Nicole started living alone in a cheap apartment to attend university. Studying is important, but you also need to relax and take a breather once in a while. When Nicole came home to visit, I advised her based on my own college days. "Don't worry. I'm trying to take breaks in my own way." The other day, a friend took me to a cheap and delicious restaurant, and then to a botanical garden. "Is this friend a guy?" "Does it matter?" Nicole, who usually spoke calmly, showed a bit of hesitation, which was rare for her, but I decided to laugh it off. Come to think of it, Nicole was about to turn 20. It wouldn't be strange for her to take appropriate breaks at her age. Remembering that Nicole's birthday was just around the corner, I made a suggestion. "Why don't we eat out as a family for once? It's your 20th birthday, so it might be nice to have something a little fancy and toast with some alcohol." That sounds great. When I mentioned this to James, he remained expressionless as usual. "If you want to go that badly, you two can go. I'll be busy with work that day too. I don't have time to waste like you guys." He added unnecessary comments that he didn't need to say and left. "Well, it's the usual, but let's just ignore him and enjoy ourselves," Nicole said with a carefree smile, so I let it go. "You're right." I laughed. For her birthday, I made a reservation at a fancy restaurant. When we entered, the staff guided us to our reserved table. At first, I was nervous about the unfamiliar atmosphere of the high-end restaurant, but gradually, as I heard the chatter of other customers in the store, I felt my heart relax along with the pleasant background music. "Are you sure? Don't you think this kind of fancy place is out of our league? Even if it's your 20th birthday, it's no different from your previous birthdays, right?" "Then should we cancel?" "No way. Since we're here, let's enjoy the delicious food." That's my daughter, honest and good. I'm honored to be praised. Even from a mother's perspective, I think she has grown into a mature and beautiful woman. I had heard rumors that several men had approached her at university. To think that she used to be such a small and cute child. When she was little, James and I often took her to family restaurants. Nicole always ordered from the kids' menu because she wanted the toys with the menu. "What? Is there something on my face?" I denied it, still smiling. It's nothing. I just thought it was a little sad that Dad wasn't here. Let's forget about him today. Besides, we came all the way to eat French cuisine, so we have to enjoy it, or it'll be a waste. As if shaking off my melancholy mood. You're right. I nodded. Well then, should I ask about your boyfriend? What's that about? Change the subject. We were having a good time with such trivial conversations, but... Hey, she's 22, right? We can get divorced without child support now. Let's get married right away. I heard a familiar male voice from behind me. When I turned around, I saw a couple sitting face to face at a table a short distance away. Dad. Nicole was the first to notice. I didn't recognize the woman sitting across from him, but she was much younger than James. The two were holding hands, unconcerned about the gazes around them. No matter how you look at it, they don't seem like just acquaintances, right? Nicole muttered in a cold tone. Yeah, it seems that way. I nodded in agreement. Really? Wow, thank you. I love you, James. I can finally be free from my aging wife and nagging daughter. I love only one person in this world, Rachel. I swear I'll protect you for the rest of my life. James said those embarrassing words boldly. This is kinda gross. I also felt like covering both of my ears. Hey, there's this church I've always dreamed of. Why don't we go see it together this Saturday? Yeah, we can just tell them I have a business trip, and they'll buy it. I want to go on a trip with you again. Unaware that we were listening nearby, James and his mistress were lost in their own little world. Watching the two of them laughing loudly without any shame, despite other customers being present, made me feel embarrassed for them. As I stood there, unable to move due to anger and embarrassment, Nicole stood up. Nicole's expression was surprisingly calm, and seeing that, I felt like something had snapped inside me too. I'm going over there for a sec. With those words, Nicole slowly got up from her seat and made her way to James and Rachel's table. Congratulations on your marriage, you two. When Nicole called out cheerfully, James didn't seem to realize it was his daughter at first, and as he turned around, thank you. He showed a softer smile than I had ever seen him show in front of us. However, the moment he realized that the person who had called out to him was none other than his own daughter, he exclaimed, Nicole! What are you doing here? And fell over with his chair in shock. Are you okay, Dad? Did you hurt yourself anywhere? Nicole asked in a gentle tone and extended her hand to James, whose mouth was wide open. Why are you here? James slapped Nicole's hand away, stood up on unsteady feet, and looked around. Then, when he saw me, he said, I knew you were here too. Don't tell me you've been following me all this time? It's just a coincidence. I told you, didn't I? Today is Nicole's 20th birthday, so we're eating out. I chose this restaurant because I thought we should splurge a little for once. I replied calmly, stood up from my seat, and stood next to Nicole. The woman who was James' mistress, Rachel, said, You too, could you be James' wife and daughter? Despite being caught in the act of cheating, Rachel was smirking triumphantly for some reason. I'm Rachel. James has been taking care of me both professionally and privately. Oh, professionally and privately, huh? Well, thank you for always taking care of my husband. Rachel, are you planning to marry my father? That's right. James always tells me. It's not his wife or daughter that he loves. It's me. James, who had been listening beside us, seemed to have become defiant. That's right. Rachel is kind and beautiful. And above all, she's much younger than you. I love Rachel more than you too. I heard Misty is a terrible wife. James always tells me. Even when he comes home tired from work, you don't cook, do laundry, or clean for him, right? It's only natural that James got fed up with you. That's not true. My mother has been selflessly serving our family for years without a single complaint. It's my father who goes out without even eating the meals my mother makes. Nicole, who had been insulted along with me, showed her emotions for the first time that day. Nicole, was it? I've heard about you too. Despite inheriting the blood of the highly educated elite James, you're a good-for-nothing daughter who's satisfied with just getting into a third-rate university. I was more shocked by the insults directed at Nicole than the ones directed at me. Did you really say something like that? This child has been desperately working hard to be useful to people in the future, and she got into her dream school. I'm just stating facts. I mean, isn't it true? You only managed to get into a third-rate university using your father's inheritance. I bet you're not even studying properly now and just playing around. The moment James said that to my face, I made a decision. I understand. If that's how you feel, there's no point in living together with you anymore. Let's get divorced, just like you wanted. When I said that, James seemed convinced that things were going according to his plan and exchanged smiles with Rachel. And one more thing, I'll be taking appropriate compensation from Rachel over there as well. You're joking. Why should I have to pay you compensation? I mean, isn't it obvious? Stealing someone else's husband is not ethically acceptable. I was just invited to dinner by James, my boss at work. Do you have any proof that I'm his mistress? Having dinner with your boss is pretty common in the world. She started making desperate excuses. When I admitted, "You're right about that," Rachel looked relieved. Well then, how about this? I grabbed James' smartphone while he was off guard and checked his message history and saved images. I see. Last month, you and James abandoned work and spent the whole day at a hotel. A week after that, you two went on a day trip. Looks like you had quite a lot of fun. Give it back. This is a violation of privacy. You know, I've been suspecting your affair for a while now and gained some legal knowledge. I thought a day like this might come. I'm glad I studied up. Looking around, I saw other customers and staff giving us strange looks. Everyone, I apologize for disturbing your meal. Wanting to avoid causing any more trouble for the restaurant, I quickly paid the bill and said to James in a low voice, "Well then, we'll continue this conversation later." Before leaving the restaurant with Nicole. A few minutes after we got home, James and Rachel came chasing after us. James had a sly smile on his face, as if he had a clever idea. "Did you come up with some scheme while riding in the taxi?" When I asked in exasperation, James and Rachel exchanged glances and laughed sarcastically. "Fine. I'll divorce you. But you have to give me a cut too." I wondered what James meant by a cut. You inherited a large sum of money from the late William, right? I'm telling you to share that with me. If we're getting divorced, it's only natural to have a division of property, isn't it? No. Ever since you two started hating me, I've been comforted by Rachel every day. So I've been giving Rachel lots of presents out of love and gratitude. Well, it's fine as long as I can get half of the inheritance. No way. The reason you haven't been contributing money to the household was to give it to that woman? And because of that, you didn't pay a penny for Nicole's tuition or college entrance exam fees? Are you saying she became a sacrifice for that woman? Are you saying Nicole became a sacrifice for that woman? Don't say such nasty things like sacrifice. It's up to me to decide who I love and who I spend money on, isn't it? James said it without any shame and ostentatiously embraced Rachel. Even though I had acquired some legal knowledge, I was still an amateur after all. I didn't know all the professional details, so when he brought up the topic of shared property, I couldn't retort. Seeing me at a loss for words, unable to argue back, James had a smug smile on his face. Don't tell me you were planning to monopolize William's inheritance all by yourself. We're married, so of course I have a right to it too. Besides, you'll probably just waste it anyway. What do you mean, waste it? I won't waste my father's inheritance. You're already wasting it. Nicole's tuition. You used William's inheritance for that, didn't you? What else would you call this but a waste of money? It's not just the inheritance. I've been keeping this from you, but I've actually been investing too. I didn't want to rely solely on my father's inheritance. When James found out that I had been making some profit from investing, he smirked. That's subject to division of property too. We'll divide William's inheritance and the investment profits. Of course, I have a huge advantage since I'm the one working. You'll barely scrape by, I suppose? Rachel, who was next to him, laughed along with James. I bit my lip in frustration, but there was nothing more I could do. Then Nicole lightly patted my shoulder and said, "It's okay, Mom. These people won't get their way. I'll teach them that reality isn't so sweet. Hey. It's pointless to act tough after coming this far. You've essentially lost. If you're joining the adult world, you should graciously admit defeat. Sorry, but Grandpa's inheritance doesn't become marital property." What? James, who had been laughing loudly, fell silent as if time had stopped, his mouth agape. It seems like you were counting on Grandpa's large inheritance, but the inheritance was passed down to Mom alone. So unlike other shared property, it won't be distributed to you, Dad. That's ridiculous. You're lying. You think you can trick us because we're amateurs when it comes to the law, don't you? Nicole sighed in exasperation. Then we can have a showdown if you want. Why don't I consult with the law school professor I'm always indebted to? They might introduce me to an excellent lawyer too. Should we go to court? Wait. There's no need to make such a big deal out of this. James, who had been a successful elite company employee for a long time, probably thought that if his affair led to a lawsuit, it would tarnish his career. It was too late to panic now, and even though everything was his own fault. I understand. I'll give up on the inheritance. I'll agree to the divorce too. I'll divide our shared assets and pay the alimony properly. Of course, I'll make Rachel pay alimony too. So please, just spare me the lawsuit. James pleaded. The one who couldn't stand the situation was Rachel, James' mistress, not us. You've got to be kidding. I absolutely won't pay any alimony. I only dated James because I thought he was rich in the first place. He bought me expensive bags, rings, and even took me on trips and to delicious meals. He gave me such a luxurious life, so I just assumed he was wealthy. That's right, I'm one of the victims who was deceived by this man too. Well then, shall we file a lawsuit? Nicole laughed. That's what I want. Stop it. Rachel, give it up. If we go to court, we have no chance of winning. Please, Rachel, calm down. I'm begging you, please accept it. James desperately restrained Rachel, who had lost her mind and started rampaging. Well then, please excuse us for today. James said, even though it was his own house, and dragged Rachel's body out as she desperately resisted. I wonder if Dad will stay at a hotel today? Let him do what he wants. It's already late today, so I'll go to the courthouse tomorrow to get the divorce papers. I also need to find a job and a place to live. I wonder if there are any good listings. After that, James and I finalized our divorce. Well then, thank you for everything up until now. I wish you happiness for many years to come. I said with a smile and waved to James, but it seems James and Rachel's relationship deteriorated to the point where it couldn't be repaired. According to rumors, even at work, the two of them would have huge fights every chance they got. Or rather, Rachel would curse at James without regard for who was watching. Naturally, the fact that they were having an affair became known to those around them, and James couldn't endure the cold stares from his colleagues and subordinates, eventually being forced to quit. It's all over. I have no one but Misty now. Despite everything that's happened, I really do need you too. So please, come back to me. Give me another chance. Saying that, James came to my workplace where I had started working, but it was so troublesome that I called the police without hesitation. This is a matter between husband and wife. Outsiders have no right to interfere. However, our divorce had already been finalized, so James was mercilessly taken away by the police officers who had rushed over. James didn't end up getting arrested, only receiving a stern warning, but he didn't learn his lesson and this time barged into the university Nicole attends. There too, he was pathetically turned away by the security guards, and James, still unable to give up, went to the apartment where Nicole lives. However, the moment he opened the front door, there stood a sturdy man. Surprised, James reportedly ran away. At this time, the person visiting Nicole's room was Kevin, a member of the rugby team at the same university who was dating Nicole. Nicole was in the back room, so she didn't notice, but later Kevin told her about the incident. She burst out laughing and couldn't stop, and she called me to share the story too. Having lost his source of income and depleted his savings, James found himself homeless, living on the streets. One day, as I was walking past the park, I caught a glimpse of a disheveled James diligently carrying cardboard boxes. I tried to leave the area quickly, hoping he wouldn't notice me. At that moment, a female acquaintance happened to call out to me. "Isn't that man your ex-husband?" "No, not at all. I don't know him." I denied instinctively and fled from the woman as well. Time passed, and Nicole brought Kevin, the man she was dating, to our home. "This is Kevin. Nicole and I are in a relationship with the intention of getting married," he introduced himself. Kevin might have been a bit too serious at times, but he seemed sincere, which was what mattered most. As we reminisced about my late father, Nicole declared, "You know, I'm definitely going to pass the bar exam and become a lawyer. I want to become a lawyer so I can help people in need. I want to be a hero, just like Grandpa." Suddenly, I felt a gaze upon me and turned around. My father's photograph was smiling gently, as if approving of her aspirations. My mind was already swelling with the idea of living with my son, Thomas. There should be no problem using the spare room as a bedroom for Thomas and his wife, Jessica. Just then, I received a call from my daughter, Dorothy, on my mobile phone. "Thomas called me." "He's already contacted you too." "That means he must have called you as well, Mom." "Yes, he did, about 10 minutes ago. Thomas, who hasn't reached out in 18 years, said he's okay with living with me. It seems Thomas has grown up without me realizing." Then, on the other end of the phone, Dorothy sighed. "Thomas has no intention of taking care of you, Mom. Before calling you, Mom, he called me. Guess what he said? He asked if he could live with me. Thomas told me he wanted to live with me. Jessica agreed as well. That's definitely a lie. He only turned to you because I refused. Our dream of living together was falling apart. The dream of living together, which had been growing inside me, was crumbling apart. I just got a call from Thomas saying he's going to live with you, and he sounded so excited. He plans to live there without working. And I overheard Jessica laughing in the background, saying they've got themselves a good housekeeper now. There's no way people like that will take care of you, Mom. My inflated expectations turned to hatred. What a predicament. I wonder if there's any way to get Thomas and Jessica to leave. I decided to seek advice from Dorothy. My name is Mary. I'm just an ordinary housewife you'd find anywhere. I lost my husband, Matthew, last year after living together for many years. Currently, I live alone in the suburbs of the city. Our children have moved out, and we had planned to enjoy a leisurely life together after retirement, but Matthew passed away suddenly. The rooms felt spacious for one, contrary to their actual size. And I felt the loneliness of suddenly having no one to talk to. Going shopping for distractions, I'd meet familiar store clerks and friends to chat with. But even taking a short walk around the neighborhood was a struggle for me. After fracturing my leg in a fall indoors in my mid-50s, I've been unable to walk without a cane. Moreover, my apartment is quite old, necessitating the use of stairs to move in and out, which is challenging since my room is on the 5th floor. This makes daily climbs up and down the stairs quite difficult with my mobility issues. Consequently, I find myself increasingly confined to my room. Fortunately, I have the inheritance Matthew left behind, so I won't struggle financially for the time being, but I'm more worried about becoming mentally isolated. Dorothy visits once a week to check on me. She runs a home-based restaurant and brings leftovers to share, which brightens my mood a bit, but I feel lonely again once she leaves. I've had no contact with my son, Thomas, since he left home after graduating high school. And I have no idea where he is or what he's doing. I had resigned myself to the fact that he's always been that way and wouldn't likely visit. Then, seeing an advertisement for a real estate agent in the newspaper, I thought it might be time to move into a barrier-free home. A barrier-free home would eliminate the need for stairs, making outings, including shopping, much easier. A small house would suffice, affordable with Matthew's inheritance. After all, it would only be me, an elderly woman, living there, so a compact space is all I need. I decided to visit a real estate agent. What surprised me recently was the abundance of vacant homes, more than I had imagined. I knew from TV news that many properties were without buyers or renters, despite being livable. Some were equipped with ramps and handrails for barrier-free access. I thought it was a waste, but according to the real estate agent, these homes were often vacated by elderly individuals who moved to facilities soon after renovations. The size and number of rooms were just right for me, and the purchase price was about 80% of what I had expected. Plus, the location, within walking distance to supermarkets and parks, encouraged me. A light walk would be possible, promising a healthier retirement life than staying cooped up at home. I began to fantasize about installing playground equipment for Dorothy's grandchildren to play with if she ever had any. How about it? I've decided. This is the place. I decided to buy that house. A few days later, Thomas, who hadn't contacted me in 18 years, finally called. My heart fluttered when I saw Thomas's name on the screen. Ah, good. Your phone number hasn't changed. Though it was over the phone, Thomas's voice sounded different, but the way he spoke was unmistakably Thomas. Thomas, Where have you been and what have you been doing all this time? Before I could express my joy at hearing Thomas's voice after so long, my anger burst forth. Thomas responded in a calm tone, seemingly unfazed by my scolding. Long time no see. How have you been recently? He asked as if we had only spoken a few months ago. I've been doing well. How about you, Thomas? Are you doing okay? I'm getting by. How about you, Mom? Any changes recently? Thomas lightly dodged my question, attempting to inquire about my recent life. I finally get to hear your voice after so long, so let's talk more calmly. I want to know more about you, Thomas. Oh, sorry. So, any changes recently? Thomas either listened or didn't, insisting on knowing about my recent life. Thomas, I heard you married a woman named Jessica? There was a brief silence on the other end of the phone. How did you know? Who told you? I heard it from Anthony, Thomas's classmate. Anthony, huh? Yeah, I did. But, more importantly, how are you doing? I was frustrated by Thomas's reluctance to talk about himself. But hearing Thomas's voice for the first time in 18 years made me tear up. Happy that he was alive and well, regardless of his whereabouts. If you got married, you should have told me properly. Come visit sometime and introduce Jessica, okay? I said in a scolding tone, hiding my happiness from Thomas. Got it. But how are you, Mom? Are you managing okay on your own? I wondered why he avoided talking about himself. Thomas was keen to know about my life, but refused to talk about his own, making it feel like he was avoiding the subject. Is everything not going well? What are you working as? Can you make ends meet? I work part-time, but I'm getting by. Tell me more about you, Mom. Since Thomas was so fixated on my life, I decided to give in and tell him about my current plans. Actually, I'm thinking of moving from my current house to a barrier-free detached house. So, that story was true. I could sense excitement in Thomas's voice. What kind of house is it? It's bigger than the one you're living in now, right? How big is it? How many rooms does it have? How big is the yard? Thomas bombarded me with questions, which surprised me. Calm down, Thomas. What's gotten into you? Then, Thomas's tone softened as if he had come to his senses. No, it's nothing. Don't worry about anything, Mom. I was concerned by Thomas's phrasing. And the sudden call after 18 years of silence, especially his keen interest in the new property I was purchasing. Are you really okay? Is there something you're worried about? Thomas had always been like this since he was a child, avoiding direct topics and subtly checking on my situation when he thought he might be in trouble, then reluctantly telling the truth when the time was right. I couldn't help feeling anxious that Thomas hadn't grown up even now. I'm really okay. There's nothing for you to worry about with me. Don't worry about anything. Thank you, Mom. I chose to take Thomas's words of gratitude at face value. Above all, I was happy that Thomas was alive and well. Come visit sometimes. Bring Jessica along. If you let me know in advance, I'll prepare a meal and wait for you. About that. Thomas hesitated to continue. I sensed that Thomas's true feelings would be revealed in his next words. Speak up if you have something to say. We're thinking about living with you, Mom. At those words, my heart leaped. Even though Dorothy comes to visit once a week, it's lonely without someone around. The idea that Thomas proposed living together was a joy for me. Really? What does Jessica say? Is she okay with it? Hearing about mother-in-law and daughter-in-law conflict being common, I couldn't deny the possibility of Jessica being against it even if Thomas was fine. But Thomas confidently assured me there was no need to worry. Jessica's okay with living with you too. You know, given your age, it would be tough on you to be alone, right? Thomas and Jessica must be worried about me getting older. Their kindness brought me to tears. Leave your care to us. We want to make up for leaving Mom alone for 18 years. It means a lot to hear you say that. Are you sure, Thomas? Of course. It was Jessica's idea, actually. She wants to take care of you, Mom, so don't worry. Saying that, Thomas laughed on the phone, but I felt uneasy. I couldn't quite explain it, but something about Thomas's tone seemed too cheerful. Yet, I chose to interpret it as happiness about our living together. After hanging up the call with Thomas, my mind was already filled with plans for our life together. I imagined the layout of the new house we planned to buy. The spare bedroom could be for Thomas and Jessica, no problem. Losing Matthew and not having anyone to talk to, I often found myself talking aloud. But I didn't feel lonely now. Thomas had said he was okay with living together. And so had Jessica. I couldn't ask for more happiness. Thinking about them taking care of me in my old age, and if Thomas and Jessica had children, the house would be lively and fun. There's a farm nearby that can be rented, so a family garden might be a good idea for weekends. My positive daydreaming just kept expanding. Then, my mobile phone rang again. It was from Dorothy. I wonder if Dorothy wants to live with us too, following Thomas. What would we do if that happened? The house would be too small. Smiling at my predicament, I answered the phone. Mom, I just got a call from Thomas. What's up? Did you already talk to Thomas? I hoped to surprise Dorothy by mentioning Thomas's call, so I was a bit disappointed. Thomas had called Dorothy before me. Thomas called you too, huh? Yes. About 10 minutes ago. He said he's okay with living together after not contacting us for 18 years. Thomas has grown up without me knowing. I couldn't help but express my happiness. Then, Dorothy sighed deeply on the other end. So that's what this is about. What's wrong? Did you want to live with us too? It's not about that. It's about Thomas. He has no intention of taking care of you, Mom. What do you mean? Dorothy sounded a bit irritated, but she took a deep breath to calm down before speaking slowly. Before he called you, he called me. Guess what he said? If he could live with us. What do you mean? Thomas said he wanted to live with me. Jessica agreed too. That's a lie. There's no way he's thinking about living with both me and you at the same time. Thinking calmly, Dorothy's words made sense. Thomas's story was contradictory. Yet, I couldn't let go of the hope for living with Thomas. Wait. I'll call Thomas again and find out what's going on. It's useless. He'll just talk his way out of it with some flimsy excuse again. Listen, Mom, you absolutely must not get involved with him. He'll sweet-talk you, and you'll end up being deceived. Dorothy stopped me with an unusually stern tone. I was at a loss for words in response to Dorothy's attitude, which allowed for such harsh criticism of Thomas. He's probably struggling with living expenses, so he thought about living at my place first. But after I refused, he reluctantly turned to you. Dorothy regained her composure and spoke to me in a calm manner, as if advising me. I was beginning to think something was off with Thomas, too. He never talked about his own situation but bombarded me with questions about mine, especially about buying a new house. In my joy at the thought of living with Thomas, I might have been all too ready to be duped, despite my doubts. It seems Thomas has just gotten better at lying, not that he had a change of heart. The dream of a happy life surrounded by family that had grown in my mind crumbled to pieces.
I got a call from him just now about living with you, and he sounded way too pleased about it. He plans to live there without working.
Dorothy went on to share some shocking truths Jessica had let slip.
And I overheard Jessica on the phone saying, "Now we have a good housekeeper." She was laughing about you like that.
Hearing this, I was stunned. What on earth do Thomas and Jessica think of me?
People with that kind of mindset could never take care of you, Mom.
My hopes for Thomas had vanished. More than anything, I didn't want the no-good Thomas living in the new house I had put a deposit on. The betrayal turned into resentment over time.
It's troubling. Is there any way to kick Thomas and Jessica out?
I decided to seek Dorothy's reliable advice. Thomas, perhaps thinking his motives weren't yet apparent, texted me his phone number. The message came with it, "This is Jessica's number," implying that I would need it to communicate frequently with Jessica from now on. But having been informed by Dorothy of Thomas and Jessica's true intentions, I had completely abandoned any hope for Thomas. No matter how sweetly he might approach me now, I had no intention of welcoming him. Whether he apologizes in front of my house or whatever he does, as far as I'm concerned, I never had a son named Thomas. From now on, I've decided Dorothy is my only child and dear family. The precious things Matthew left behind won't be taken by Thomas and Jessica, who never cared about their parents. Not even when Matthew was hospitalized and sick did Thomas show his face or contact us. From now on, whatever happens to him, I couldn't care less. He's a stranger to me, not my son or anything. Presumably after getting my number from Thomas, Jessica began calling frequently, but I decided to completely ignore her. Getting irritated by the persistent calls every day, I finally decided to block her number. The call log showed 37 missed calls, but I never returned any, and the contact from Jessica ceased. She might still be trying to reach out, but having blocked her, it doesn't matter to me anymore.
How have you been? Any contact from Thomas?
Occasionally, Dorothy comes by after work with leftovers from the restaurant and checks in on me, but I just smile and shake my head.
There's no contact because I blocked the calls. It's been stuck at 37 missed calls. I wonder if their phone bill is the one that's really suffering?
I said, with a hint of sarcasm, and Dorothy laughed. About a month into my decision to ignore them, Dorothy's mobile phone began to ring.
From Thomas. Mom, what should we do?
Apparently, Thomas had called Dorothy, deciding that Jessica was no longer an option.
I'll leave it up to your judgment. I am a bit curious about what's going on with them, though.
When I said this, Dorothy laughed and responded,
I was thinking of ignoring them, but I'm actually quite curious to see what's become of them, too.
Dorothy, with a broad smile, answered Thomas's call.
What's going on?
Instead of Thomas, it was Jessica's shouting voice that came through the phone. Screaming like a howling wolf, loud enough for me to hear from a distance. Directly exposed to the yelling, Dorothy quickly pulled the mobile phone away from her ear and calmly soothed Jessica like a zookeeper calming a wild animal.
You don't need to shout. I can hear you just fine.
It was my first time hearing Jessica's voice, and she seemed like a peculiar person for speaking to her husband's family with such a confrontational attitude.
To be able to hurl such insults at a family you've never even met, you must be quite lacking in common sense.
Dorothy, holding back laughter, retorted to Jessica's complaints. Jessica lowered her tone a bit, but her voice was still powerful enough to reach my ears.
Explain clearly what's going on. Why is nobody living there? We went to the new house we bought, and they say it hasn't been purchased yet.
Dorothy occasionally pulled the phone away from her ear, trying to make sense of the other side's argument.
Calm down, Jessica. You don't need to shout. I can hear you.
Put it on speakerphone. I want to listen too. I found this unusual character, Jessica, amusing and couldn't help but want to hear more.
Mom sure is curious.
Dorothy switched to speakerphone, and Jessica's screaming voice echoed throughout the room. I felt a momentary pang of guilt for possibly disturbing the neighbors, but figured everyone was likely out at this time of day and nobody was around. Besides, Jessica was the one bothering to call and complain at such an hour.
All right. I'll explain it to you in a way even you can understand, so listen carefully.
Then Dorothy began to slowly explain the method of retaliation we had employed over the last month.
Truth be told, that new house isn't actually Mom's property yet. We hadn't decided whether to buy that house yet. What do you mean? You said you were moving to a new place because of an inheritance. We tried to move our stuff in, but were stopped by the manager. The real estate agent showed up, and we even got scolded by the police.
Hearing Jessica's outcry about the police ordeal, Dorothy and I couldn't contain our laughter any longer and burst out laughing.
Hey, stop laughing. I can hear everything. You tricked us.
What are you talking about?
You two were the first to try and deceive Mom. Weren't you trying to ingratiate yourselves with Mom now that she's alone to move in?
Dorothy, appalled by Jessica's selfish reasoning, calmly countered. Indeed, I had planned to purchase that new house. But after learning of Thomas and Jessica's motives, I reconsidered. I consulted Dorothy about possibly canceling the purchase, and she informed me it could be canceled by forfeiting it.
So, that house was never actually purchased by Mom. Was that your idea? Don't interfere unnecessarily.
Hearing the growling on the other end, Dorothy once again pulled the mobile phone away from her ear.
Just tell me where Mary is. Don't mess around.
As I laughed off their demands and protests, Dorothy sharply retorted.
I wouldn't tell someone who calls Mom a housekeeper. How did you know? No, that must be a mistake. I don't remember saying anything that terrible. You might not be aware of it, but your voice is quite loud. If you speak that loudly, it can be heard even without directly holding the mobile phone.
Silenced by Dorothy's comeback, Jessica fell quiet. Then the voice changed to Thomas's. Dorothy, you know Mom's legs aren't what they used to be. We need to take care of her. I found it amusing to picture Thomas's desperate tone on the other end of the line. He was saying all the right things, but it was too late for any care to make a difference. If I hadn't realized Thomas and Jessica's plot by now, they would have surely treated me as a convenient housekeeper. Thomas's attitude, claiming such insincere intentions so blatantly, was both funny and a bit sad.
Anyway, you two have no business worrying about me or telling me anything.
With that, Dorothy dismissed Thomas with finality. We'll figure it out ourselves. The call ended with Thomas hanging up angrily.
Was that the right thing to do? It's their own fault. Idiots like them won't learn unless they face the consequences.
Dorothy said, smiling triumphantly. A few days later, Dorothy came to visit my house with leftovers from the restaurant.
What's happened since then? Did Thomas and Jessica say anything?
I was curious about the continuation of the incident and asked Dorothy. Dorothy answers with a big smile. Plenty. Seems like they've gotten themselves into quite a mess. Dorothy shared with a full smile the current predicament of Thomas and Jessica. That afternoon, Thomas had called Dorothy pleading for help.
Please, Dorothy! We're family, help us!
Thomas was crying on the phone.
The truth is, we're being chased for debts.
Thomas and Jessica had planned to rely on my new home and wealth from the start, thinking they could live comfortably without working by quitting their part-time jobs. In other words, he currently has no money. Now, without any money, after I canceled the purchase of the new house, they moved into a rundown apartment nearby, but soon couldn't afford the rent and were evicted. Ordinarily, they might have returned to part-time work, but they chose an unexpected path. The two of them borrowed a large sum from dubious lenders in hopes of striking it rich through gambling. I could almost see Jessica's face, someone I had never met. We can't go back to part-time work now. We'll make a fortune from gambling and show them. Imagining Jessica saying such a line, I couldn't help but burst into laughter. Thomas and Jessica, having gambled away borrowed money, were now on the run from debt collectors.
So, I told Thomas this. Never to involve you or me in their lives ever again.
Dorothy, you always have to deal with so much. I expressed my concern for Dorothy's troubles. Later, I decided to move into a care facility that Dorothy found for me. This way, Thomas and them won't be able to approach. But are you sure you won't be lonely, Mom? I smiled and shook my head.
You've done so well for me. And this hamburger is delicious.
Thank you. It's popular with the customers too. Dorothy would sometimes bring leftovers from the restaurant, so I never felt lonely. Mom, I have a suggestion. Dorothy began with a serious tone. My husband and I have been thinking about building a new house soon.
That sounds wonderful. I'm sure it will be a beautiful home.
As my eyes lit up, Dorothy took my hand and said, If it happens, would you like to help out at our store? Only if you're okay with it, of course. I was just getting tired of the same daily walks around the facility.
Don't underestimate me because I'm old. I can still do my part when needed.
You would say that, I knew it. So, it's decided then. We'll make sure there's plenty of space around the cash register so you can easily fit. The thought of starting work at the store fills me with so much anticipation that I can't help but smile. I still haven't been able to get in touch with Thomas and the others, but at this point, there's nothing I can do about it. Whatever happens to them, it has nothing to do with me. Watched over by my beloved Dorothy, I've sworn to myself that I'll live my life without worrying about Thomas anymore.